Yeah, welcome to Wednesday Ultra. I'm Andreas. Seth is here with us tonight. How's it going, Venice Beach Dub Club in the house?
Awesome, man. I'm in a haunted beach house and it's 100 degrees, but I'm loving it.
Dude, actually, before I continue along and just make sure I don't get too sidetracked, but tell us a little bit about that because that sounded kind of creepy. So you're at this house.
I'm renting this house that just happens to be on the beach just for a month before I move into my new place. And last night at 4 a.m. in the morning, the TV turned on and I woke up and I heard voices and I was like, are my neighbors partying on a Tuesday? And then I saw flashing lights and I went to the living room. The TV was on with like an Egypt documentary, like full volume. And I was like, whoa. Yeah, and
you're like, I'm into it, but I mean,
I was spooked out. It was very spooky. And this door is like, I can't close this door up here. There's like a spooky door at the top of the stairs that won't close all the way. It's like there's definitely ghosts coming out of there.
Is there like a sarcophagi as a direct decoration in this place? Like,
yeah,
how old is the house?
It seems like it's probably like 30 years old, I would say.
Yeah, but you never know in LA because things get updated all the time.
Yeah,
right.
Everybody's
died. Every house in LA, someone's died in. And also, if you get into the walls, man, and you see like, so when they're building these houses under the sheetrock, there's like all this weird. There's like a week there that, or a month, or several that they didn't finish it. Kids have gone in and they've spray painted Baphomet all over the entire insides of every wall. It's crazy. I'm not kidding. The kinds of weird graffiti that people do on the it's terrible.
I got a Candyman up in here.
My family thinks I'm crazy. Mark, what's up? You've been doing some crazy videos. How you doing? What's up?
I'm great. I don't know which videos you're talking about, but I'm glad you think they're crazy. It's in the name of my show. It fits. I'm just jealous that I'm not living in the home of Brendan Fraser over there with the mummy haunting me. Spooky season, and there's not enough exciting things going on in New England of all places.
Yeah, right. Like there's not enough ghosts in New England. Yeah, right. God, you want to see ghosts in New England? You just get in your car and go any direction in about 10 minutes. Like anywhere you go, there's about this little neighborhood was built on top of a pilgrim cemetery that or whatever, or there's still cemeteries there in the middle of the woods. It's a lot like, it's terrifying. I don't know.
You never just had a book come out of your bookshelf and wind up sitting somewhere and you're like, I don't remember taking this book out.
I did actually lose. Really mysteriously, I have a very small apartment. I lost this book. It disappeared. It went into a portal. I swear, it's one of my favorite books. I could not find it. I combed my apartment, so I had to order a new one. And
wow, ghosts love books, man. You got to watch out.
I think I really seriously thought about that for a few days.
They love reading.
Somebody like steal my book, like a ghost or something,
or you just walk away. Like I love the idea of
cemetery from where you're from.
Yeah, there is, right? Mark, you've got some crazy cemetery in your area.
Oh, yeah. I live in a town that's 400 years old, so there's definitely...
Isn't the Micmac Indians, right? Isn't that where Pet Cemetery, all that stuff was filmed, or no?
Yeah, you're talking about New Hampshire and Maine, but yeah.
Oh, okay, close enough.
I mean, close enough, yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
I didn't know Indians had knickknacks. You can't picture a shelf in a teepee.
It's a Micmac.
That was a bit of a Catskills joke. I like it. So Giant, so wait, just earlier today I did a video with Stellium. Did you see that video, Giant?
I didn't get a chance to.
There was that'd be crazy. I don't know how you would physically be able to do that. But even still in the video, Stellium was talking about the maps. And he was pointing out a lot of things that reminded me of the work you've done and shown about the pathways of for the serpent along the coast and things like that. I wanted to pull, actually, let me see if I can pull up the Panama map. You can see like the idea of the physical. I feel like they changed the presentation for StreamYard so that it says present now instead of share or something. Maybe I'm wrong. Could be wrong. I don't know. I might just be blaming myself, but okay. Pulling out here. There's a couple of these areas. Let me see if I can get the satellite map on.
A plan, a Panama Canal.
Right. There's a couple of these places where they talk about like the Sea of Cortez being this, mouth or whatever, but really like it's consuming and a bunch of islands that appear and disappear in this area. And I was wondering if you had like thoughts on landmass formations and things like that.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Mark.
I'm just really blown away. I never thought of this like a mouth before, but now that you mention it, it looks like a mouth like coughing a bunch of islands out. And I know that was delivered for you, Giant, so I didn't mean to interrupt there. But
no, that's good.
It's like the mouse.
Perfect.
What's the rabbit and the guy, like the illusion image where you see it one way it's a duck, the other way it's a rabbit. I feel like I just got told that there's a duck here.
Yeah. And there are words, I forget exactly, like the Baymouth, there's a name for Baymouth, that it refers to that idea as well. So a number of these things that have said this. But I was going to ask, just because Giant, I know you've talked about this before and I hadn't really delved into this as deeply, but Stellium's talking a bit today. It's basically the idea of titans, right? The idea that not everything starts out as really small and gets bigger. Sometimes we actually have fossilization and petrification of Leviathan-sized creatures or things like that, or whatever that means too, because you've talked about giant serpents. So I wonder what you think about this in general.
So, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people misconstrue when I try to point these things out that it's something that actually lived at one time. What I actually am more leaning towards is that there's a vibrational frequency to everything,
right,
and the geology of our world. This is why we see things in the clouds, right? Is that there's a vibration that's sending it and actually creating those shapes. That's why we have the shapes of the way that we look, the way that serpents look. All the things in this existence are they're catching a certain frequency that's probably coming from the center of the earth, and they come out in certain areas. And this is why people have focused in on like geomancy and structuring cities and everything like that in certain ways and aligning them. It's not only to do with the stars, it has to do with internal vibrations that are coming out. And when these vibrations maybe collide or whatever, they create structures like this. We start finding features that look like giant something, like a serpent or a bird or whatever.
Maybe you're familiar with this already, Giant, but wow, that's a synchronicity, because the book I just told you guys disappeared through a portal in my apartment is the one that I'm holding now in my hands. And it's dealing with exactly what you're talking about, Giant, this concept that in a sort of fractalized way, the cultural, biological, everything, the totality of the energy of a place is expressed in the geography itself. So, and then humans also intervene and create even further patterns. But
because we're a part of that nature, right? We are being pushed. This is why the astrology, astronomy, all these things above as below is so important, right? To understand, because what it's telling us is that everything is actually in synchronicity. And if you pay attention to the details, you'll start seeing things. This is how they found ayahuasca. They didn't find it because it was actually talking to them and telling them that this plant is there. If you look at the world, you look at plant life, right? You start seeing features. If you know anything about how plants, like I can go outside and you can send me into a forest or whatever, and you can say, what tree is that? What is it? And I can identify it, you know what I mean? And I can know a lot of it's like, cousins and stuff like that, and chemical compounds that it produces, because it shows in features that it has, right? Yeah, you see that? I don't, what is that saying specifically right there? But you see California is on the edge of that.
Yeah, so this is referring to the Grand Teton's Wheel, and it describes this enormous series of mountain chains that follow this sort of sunflower-looking pattern along the west coast there. And then into
Is this the same thing as ley lines, or?
Well,
yeah, it all connects. Yeah.
Here's the thing about ley lines. So ley lines would be like a linear version of what we just looked at. Giant and folks like the author of that book, Peter Shampoo, are extrapolating the linear nature of a ley line into multiple, geometries. So ley lines are just one portion of these sort of geometric, sacred geographical.
All right, I'm just trying to make sense of all the crazy things I heard already. And Giant, you were saying that ayahuasca, they could tell by looking at it, like what the effects of it would be, or
so it's called, there's two different plants, right? And then people wonder why it is that they could connect these two different plants and then mix it so that you can get the effects
the
of
MEO inhibitor thing.
Yeah, and it's because if you actually look at all these plants, any of the ones that actually carry any of the DMT or anything like that, there's similarities, a lot of similarities in them, and people that are, visually. So people that are plant identifiers can show you this, that there's these certain features, right? So you have you know, there's palm looking, there's pine looking. Like have you guys ever done like identification books for plants and trees and stuff like that?
No, not me.
So if you look at, if you study it a lot, you'll start
What
seeing.
Does the plant look like? Can you pull up a picture of what the ayahuasca plant looks like? I've never even seen the plant itself.
Yeah, one sec. Let me
yeah, it's like it's in the like the mimosa, right? It has a mimosa name.
There's two plants actually that work with it as well.
Yeah.
So there's the
it looks like kaffir lime leaves.
Yep. And there's, so
this is
if you look at the Native Americans, they're a lot of their lineage, I think there was some mixing that obviously went on once they came over to the Americas, but I believe that they're from the Asian culture. There was coins found of the Khans, right, in the Ozarks, right, that they were sending over these coins. And so it looks like the Native Americans were here mapping out, you know, thousands of years ago, mapping out the Americas. So they come from the Chinese culture, which has, you know, for thousands of years been mapping out how plant life and mushrooms and all this stuff, how they can be used medicinally. So they had a lot of details that they knew of, you know, looks and features, how to verify how these plants could be used, and if they were poisonous and all this stuff. And there's visual features to this world that if you pay attention to the details, you'll start picking up on those things. So I think it was more of that they understood that, hey, this plant is very close to this one that we've used before, and it did this, and then we had to break down this. I just think that they're hiding thousands of years of really mapping out plant life. And
and while simultaneously telling us that everything's been explored and discovered, it's almost like a video game that's already been beaten, that we've been born into. They're like, don't worry, we found all the plants, everything's done, nowhere to go, nothing to see.
Yes, exactly.
Pull up a picture of Romanesco. I bet the first people to eat Romanesco were expecting to trip out hard and got super disappointed. It barely even has flavor, bro. You'd think that would do something for you.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, there's trickery plants. There's plants that look a lot alike, you know, ones that are, you know, good for you and healthy, and they're actually poisonous. So there's a lot of details to it, but
yeah, what a boring tasting plant. What a bummer, right?
It looks so amazing. Like you'd think it had you could smoke it or something.
It
nope.
tastes like avocado or anything. I don't know, nothing. That's the cauliflower.
It looks psychedelic for sure.
But these plants, John Bannister, Bannisteropsis copy is the genus Bannisteropsis, 17th century English clergyman and naturalist who discovered. So I mean,
Bannisteropsis.
Bannister, what do we say?
Bannisteropsis.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they named it, but it was obviously found and used before they named it.
Right. So either the Psychotria viridis, another.
You know who Michael Harner is? Have you ever heard of Michael Harner?
Michael Harner.
No, I haven't heard of him.
Michael Harner was one of the first people to ever go into the jungle and write about his ayahuasca experience. And what's so interesting, one of the theories he came up with was that he wasn't having the same type of trip as the Jivaro natives that he was tripping with. He was having a trip that was possibly accessing some part of his ancestral DNA, because he had a vision of a longboat with Egyptian deities in, you know, behind the boat. Whereas the Jivaros, you know, they would see things that were more compatible with their traditional mythology. This guy who was raised in academia had this weird Egyptian hallucination, and his theory was that ayahuasca is sort of like pulling your ancestral knowledge and bringing it into the forefront of your mind. But he wrote a book called The Way of the Shaman.
Yeah, have you guys anybody done ayahuasca in this group?
I've done a lot of mushrooms, but I've never done DMT or ayahuasca.
Yeah,
I think they're similar in what they're trying to do. I've done ayahuasca with a
funny. I just spoke to Rick Strassman, the first guy who ever tested DMT on people legally in the United States. That episode will be out this week.
Man, I'm so interested in Psychonauts, like the government program where they put people on like an IV drip of DMT for like days and weeks and have them go in and cut deals with the Clockwork Elves and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which also is in the Superman comics. They go into other dimensions and they get technology from people that live in other dimensions. Like they use something called a mother box to go. It's so amazing how like all these like contemporary like futuristic ideas like all exist in like 1940s comics. That always blows my mind.
Let me tell you something interesting about what ayahuasca told me.
Yeah, oh yeah.
It told me not to tell you guys.
Really?
It didn't tell me not to tell you guys. It told me not to tell anybody in the group that we were doing. But I asked it like,
Mark, why are you upside down?
What?
I'm on ayahuasca, dude.
Yeah.
Oh, sick. Tricks. He's got tricks,
hanging, man. That was Batman right there.
Well, hold on. I feel like now we're never going to hear the ayahuasca story. Oh, now he's taking a sip. Now we're never going to know.
Of ayahuasca?
Can you tell us, or you're not going to tell us?
It showed me that what Mother Nature is, that's what ayahuasca is, right? And that it does it. You can kind of think of her as the Enchantress. And what she's doing is, and especially on ayahuasca or any of the mushrooms or any of that stuff, is it's relaxing you and it's showing you things and it's putting you through actually a series of things that you're almost walking through the houses of the zodiac. And each one of those have a certain energy and it helps you unravel certain things. And it connects into some of, like Aster and all this stuff where she's going to the underworld and she has to release pieces of her items of her clothes as she goes through certain gates, right? And it has to break you down and it has to open you up because you have experiences that you're hiding from God, that you're hiding from the sun. The sun gave you your life and it gives you all the energy and everything, and you're supposed to have these experiences in this world. And you're supposed to give those experiences back because it needs to figure out how to perfect things through the experiences, the wrongs, the rights, all the different things. And when you hide them because you're hiding them from yourself, you lock them in. And so she is the Enchantress that has to figure out how to help you release all that information, all those pent up memories and stuff like that, so that you can release them back to God.
Interesting. I like what in the chat, where'd it go? Pineapple Man says, think fractals and storylines, timelines.
Yeah.
Right. Things that rhyme, history that rhymes. And the fact that these plants are from so far away. There's not a plant near ayahuasca, near the, which one is it, Mark? The one that's
MAOI inhibitor.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's two ingredients. The DMT is pretty much in any plant, but there are certain plants that have higher concentrations of it. And then the Banisteriopsis vine has the MAOI inhibitor in it, which creates the psychedelic reaction.
Right. So, but the Banisteriopsis is going up against the Psychotropia, or right? Or there's something that's called that.
It's stopping you from metabolizing it.
There is a certain type of
viridis is the one that's in
there's a thing in your stomach that like strips the psychedelic components from certain plants, because there are a lot of plants that could like potentially give us these mind altering things, but we have I forget what it's called in our stomach that, if we don't have an inhibitor in place, it'll just digest all of those alkaloids and we won't even trip.
It's very much like a video game where you have your inventory with different things and you try combining the different things. I think even in Resident Evil, you can like make medicine and stuff. You find different stuff and it's all like in a grid and you put the things together and you can like unlock secrets like that. And we're so married to like this, our the continuum of our life story. And like, it seems so much more real than like other potential variants of ourselves or other timeline versions of ourselves if we had made other choices or had different consequences. And we're so married to like the continuation of like this one timeline, and whenever I did mushrooms, I always felt like it freed me of that and like to not be so concerned with like the episodic nature of my life.
But there's a huge distance in miles and kilometers from where in the Amazon rainforest the Psychotria viridis grows, and where in the Bolivian Quechua mountains that the Banisteropsis grows, right? They're like 1,000 miles or 500 to 1,000 miles away from each other. And so that's an interesting thing, that there's a relationship between these two plants that are grown on opposite ends of the rainforest, one in the higher elevation, one in the flooding plain area.
There are, you know, I love that we got here from Chinese medicine, because like look at the huge like compendium of information they've collected on herbs and their uses. And one of the strategies I've learned from someone who's a Chinese herbalist is that you analyze the plant by its appearance, very much like we were looking at the landform and saying, wow, that kind of looks like a snake. And if we watch a time lapse of the earth, it might even move like a snake, right? Whereas these plants, maybe that are snake-like, a vine, for instance, they might have a specific function. And once you learn that, you're like, okay, when I see the snake-like plants, I'm going to know that that is a certain function. And you start to pick up these cues around nature in your environment, and you're in this jungle of patterns. You pick up the right patterns and you start to know, okay, this plant has this feature to it. That means it's probably good for my lungs. This plant's good for sinuses, and so on and so forth. You can kind of eye it out that way.
Yes. And then kind of to connect it all back. Look, this is why I believe that not only did the Asians come and find the Americas first, most likely, right? And why all humanity was always looking for the Americas the whole time. And why it is that these Masons, Jefferson and all of them, did the geomancy that they did and structured the cities that they did, like Washington, D.C., and why they were looking for California, and why it has that snake and that eagle represented there, right? The cons were the dragons, right? It was all snake-like. It was all snake-related stuff. They were looking for this place. There's old stories in you know, India where there was two brothers. I don't know exactly. I'm just kind of paraphrasing, but there was two brothers, and they said, look, one's going to go to the east and one's going to go to the west. And eventually in history, we're going to find each other, you know what I mean? And we're going to, you know, reconnect basically. And when we do, you got to carry these certain stories so that we remember that it was us, these two brothers, that were meant to go and look for this place.
You're talking about serpents and snakes. We have the Nagas in India, and then here in Central and South America, you have the Nagual, right? I mean, pretty much the same word. And then it's even, I think there are even places in Mesopotamia with similar words, but they've been altered over time. And yeah, it's very much like a serpent dragon motif. I mean, even Quetzalcoatl, like people think of it as a bird, but it's really more of a serpent.
And the Khan, right? So there's Kukulkan, right? And then there's Genghis Khan. And that the coins that they found in the Americas were of the Khans. As each one died, a new one came in as the emperor. They would give off a coin that they would send over to the Americas, and it would get passed along the Native Americans. And they found coins all the way on the East Coast that, you know, you know, as far as we can understand, it came from the West Coast, and they probably either sailed or came across the Bering Strait and brought these coins all the way in to tell you, hey, the new Khan is now in power, right? And he was always the dragon. And so if you look up in the Mayan astrology, or the Mayan word Kan, K-A-N, and this is like Vatican, right, is also a snake, right? So they believe in this snake. And then on these Hindu temples, there's this guy, his name is Kapel or something like that. He's an Indian guy that works with, you know what I'm talking about?
Are you talking about Kopal, the deity, or the figure from Mayan history?
No, I'm talking about this Indian guy nowadays. He does a YouTube channel. He's actually worked with the guys from Ancient Aliens and stuff like that. But he goes into all the temples down in India and everything, and he shows a lot of these temples in India and also in you know, Southeast Asia, where he says, look, this snake that they have on these temples, it has a rattle on it, and we don't have rattlesnakes here. And he's found evidence both in the Americas that is Indian related, and he found stuff in India that's America related.
You don't have cobras in Americas, and yeah, that's. I wonder if they have cobra imagery in South America. That would be cool.
Yeah.
Well, the idea though of prototypical bird serpents, the fact that birds are reptiles at all kind of insinuates that there was maybe a point when we would have seen more of those. And most of the stories are about killing them, right? Like they kill us until we kill them or something like that. So I can see that as being a big connection. This is something that was more not just a cunning beast of the field, but also like human in ways, because it was as creative as human, maybe even seemed like it had its own civilization, or at least was as smart as human, so it was competitive with human.
So we have if you look at Tutankhamun, right? He has a bird and a snake on his headdress, right? And he has a plumed serpent. See how it's multicolored, like rainbow colored, his body,
right?
So that's Quetzalcoatl. It's the same kind of thing. It's the same deity, right? And this is why the Rosicrucians, which are Egyptian based, have their main place here in the Americas. They have it in San Jose, right in the mouth of the snake. They know that the geomancy, the geography, they're looking for the geography. They're looking for these features kind of to bring it back. And the Ethiopians have the closest genetic tie to the South Indians, the Tamil and people from Kerala, right? And they were called the Dravidians. They still hold the name of Dravidian down in South India, but it used to, Dravidian, the whole area was Northern Africa, all through the Middle East and into India. And it looks like, and then the language of the Tamil is the closest language to Japanese. So it looks like there was a huge shipping fleet that was all the way from southern India, all the way up to, northern China, Korea, Japan. And they worked together, and they moved across to the Americas, and they moved a lot of their culture over here.
Wow, I've never heard of this.
And if you look at the Native Americans of the Bay Area, they look Indian. They look like they're from India specifically.
Out of curiosity, once you find the place that is the mouth of the snake, or wherever you're trying to locate the geological space, like what happens once you find it or get there?
That's where they built Silicon Valley, and they put the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco.
So it's like an energy vortex type place.
Yeah, it has a certain type of energy that will do what they think it will do, because they've been passing us down for thousands of years to find a certain place and do a certain thing. I believe from the evidence that I'm seeing is that they think that they can open up a vortex, right? They put like the D-wave machines and all that stuff here. They created the black mirror, or this interface that is the shadow of death. So in the Bay Area, they have two mountain ranges. On one side is the Diablo mountain range, and this is where you have the Zodiac killer, right? And he marked it on purpose right in the snake's eye, pretty much. And it goes down a dragon ley line. You were talking about ley lines. It goes down a dragon ley line, and it runs right through Santa Cruz. Santa Cruz is the other mountain range. Well, when the sun rises on the east, it casts a shadow through the Silicon Valley from the Diablo Mountains, and that is creating the valley of the shadow of death. And the valley has had many names. It's the valley of the heart's delight, all kinds of stuff.
Right.
But I think they made this interface which holds the valley of the shadow of death, and we all hold it in our hands. We're all looking at it right now. It holds all this information that's dead. You know what I mean? It's the history of man. It's all been dead. So I walk through the valley of shadow of death. I fear no evil. Even though evil is there, you have to fear no evil, and you have to walk through wisely and know that God is your armor in this all. And we're walking through it right now. That's why they have the apple bitten out of, right? It's showing you that we're in this.
But literally, this valley in Northern California is literally like an evil place.
Santa Cruz has got a lot of evil in it. It's like, you ever watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer? It's based
the Hellmouth. The Hellmouth.
Yeah, the Hellmouth is hideous. What's it called? Santa, what do they call it in the
Clarita, Santa Clarita.
Sunnydale. That's the thing. Santa Cruz is the basis for everything. For Sunnydale, for Santa Clarita and the Lost Boys, which is shot at the boardwalk as well. It happens over and over again. But it's not just Santa Cruz. It's what Santa Cruz represents. Santa Cruz means sacred crossing. It's often meant as Holy Cross, because the Catholics have the Holy Cross. But originally they wanted to name it Branciforte. And then there was a freaking giant earthquake after they built the first church in Branciforte. And then there were supposedly pedophiles, and there's all these stories of Illuminati, Templar things going on. And it was a big part of it just caved in, and a big part of the cliff, on Westcliff, jetted up. And where Westcliff is now, that's where the Santa Cruz Church, if I can find the name of it, hopefully it'll Santa Cruz, California. Hopefully it'll.
The church was raised and the valley was.
So now they've got this thing built in Santa Cruz, built on the place that is lifted up out from where the former church area, which was behind it, had.
Those look like gates of Baal in front of it.
It's a pretty interesting situation. Yeah. And there's a couple scary churches around Santa Cruz. I'm not saying that these people are bad people or anything. I'm just saying, like, Santa Cruz has some weird churches. Like, this is another church in Santa Cruz right on Westcliff. And this is where I was saying Westcliff wouldn't have existed if it weren't for the fact of this giant earthquake that happened only about 300 or 400 years ago. And so this is the church right on there. And I've always just driven by it and been like, why? This crazy downward pointed hexagram in a step pyramid ziggurat above it. I don't know. It's a lot going on.
Got some Star of David activity right there for Christian church. Interesting.
I don't know. I should be happy about only riding Santa Cruz skateboards or weirded out.
That's a whole other thing I shouldn't get into.
So Mercury is associated with San Jose, right? And Mercury is the one that holds the caduceus. And if you really look at what this bird and this serpent mixture is it, Mercury's staff, the caduceus, is the wings on top of these two serpents intertwining and going up. And there's a lot of different ways of symbolizing the same sort of thing, and it has to do with medicine, right? So there was a meeting with the original Buddha. Supposedly this is the original Buddha, the Maitreya Buddha. And he had a meeting with all, if you go into the Hindu culture and the ancient Asian cultures and Buddhism and all that stuff, it's all related, that they believe that there was two sides. There was the ones that were associated with the Nagas, and there was the ones that were the like Suryas. They were the sun related ones. And they had to actually help each other to actually get churning going and get the world going, right? It's the duality. Well, there was some conflicts that were happening between all these creatures, and the Maitreya had basically a little bit of a convention and sat down and said, everybody, had them all as audience, all the demons, all the good, the bad, the ugly, the humans, everything, and said, look, you guys are the medicine for each other. You can only come up with a solution to what's going on in this world by interacting and fighting and whatever it takes to come out with solutions. You have to have experiences, and then those experiences are going to tell me how to act. I will be back in the future once you guys have gone through time and had your interactions and all this stuff, and I will come up with a solution of how to fix you. And I'm going to mix everything you've done and everything into this medicine bowl. And this is where the medicine Buddha comes in. And this is the medicine Buddha's right there in Santa Cruz, right next to this large open space that has to do with the Azul open space, right? But we're getting mixed into this mixing bowl, and you need both of the duality. So that's why on one side you have the Diablo Mountains, on the other side you have the Santa Cruz, the Sacred Mountains, and why you have this a lot of dualities, a split into this Y or a V, like a chalice shape, and then down the middle they have the Guadalupe River that runs right into the bay, and there's Mercury that's found at the throat of the snake, and it's called San Jose Mercury News. Our newspaper for San Jose is the San Jose Mercury News, and this is where Kanye went crazy. He represents Mercury.
Right. He did do
He
it
was
here.
in San Jose first, and he went crazy. He started saying all that stuff, right? When everybody started thinking he was crazy, it started in San Jose. Then he moved up to Sacramento, which is right up the ley line, the Dragon ley line. And then he started doing it in Sacramento, and he made even a bigger spectacle, right? He sacrificed himself in the Sacramento.
Right. And the Mercury, of course, being the messenger god as well.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of tie-ins there. There was another thing we just went by. Oh, there's a comment from Mr. Douglas. Mr. Douglas is in the house. I want to say thank you, Mr. Douglas.
Get him in here.
I miss you so much. You should just visit. Like, you can get on your phone and just like start running. He says wicked fast search skills. Thank you. I appreciate that. But Doug, we can't wait for you to be back. It's hard without you. We love you, but it'll.
Yeah, where is he? On vacation or something?
I think he's fighting the war. You know, he's in the trenches. I think that's what's going on. But
let us know if you need any help, Mr. Douglas. We're here for you.
Yeah, exactly. Let us know. You know, because all we gotta do is just help. So, but I think he's with his brother and his mom or something like that because it's like holidays. I don't know. I don't know the whole story.
What holiday? Halloween? Sorry, I'm being insensitive.
They're all witches. That's like their big holiday. You just totally insulted them.
It's a big deal. Yeah. There was some mainstream reality actually I wanted to look at, but I'm gonna do a sync thing, like, or a what do you call a acknowledgement of something I hadn't really noticed before, which is the word Gorgon. So Gorgon came up, and a Gorgon is a Gorgon occurs in the earliest examples of Greek literature. While descriptions of Gorgons vary, the most commonly refers to three sisters who are described as having hair made of living venomous snakes, right? So the Gorgons. And the Gorgons are like the the small soldiers, good guys, the good guys who were trying to save the world.
Love the Gorgonites, dude. I used to wish my G.I. Joes would come alive.
Right. Yeah, but like, did you realize that we were probably crypto praying to these like serpent-haired women from ancient times of torture? I don't know. That could be like
me then.
She was a Gorgon, right? Is Medusa a Gorgon?
I would imagine. That seems like what. Yeah, Medusa was not. Check this out. Traditionally, two of the Gorgons, Theno and Uriel, were immortal. But no. Okay, so she was a Gorgon, but she was not immortal. That was okay. So she is a Gorgon. Okay, so that's confusing.
Didn't we talk about that last week? I thought we mentioned Medusa and Libya.
I feel like Medusa came up with the flash glass, talking about the Libyan glass.
Yeah, we talked about that last week.
Does Gorgonzola cheese come from the root word Gorgon?
Yes.
Just out of curiosity. It does?
Yes.
What does Zola mean?
I don't know. We got to look that up. I'm not sure what the Zola part. But George comes from Gorgon, right? If you see Georgiani or anything like that, that's all Gorgon. Wow. And she was actually raped. Medusa was raped, and she was punished by her father because she allowed herself to be put in a position where she would get raped. She got raped in the temple, and then that punishment was to give her the snake hair. Brutal. It's kind of like it's kind of a messed up scenario of why she was punished with that.
Because she wasn't wearing snake hair to keep her safe,
right?
Yeah, she wasn't being intelligent enough, I guess. So then she got punished for being a victim.
Yeah, interesting. But of course, the desert glass is interesting because there's a place that is just flashed with volcanic glass, which shouldn't exist unless there was temperatures that could only be reached. Well, not only be, but seem to be so far only have reached by nuclear blast or in extreme electrolysis. You know, kinds of lightning rods maybe you could use to do this. But yeah, the Libyan desert glass, kind of similar to the idea of the Gorgonites. But there was, and then giant creatures. We kind of talked about how giant creatures existed, and we now pretend that, people don't even believe it's possible. And imagine what it'll be like in 10 years when elephants are extinct, or 100 years when elephants, or whatever it takes. And people say, there's no way there was an animal as large as an elephant, right? So I wonder how large do you think about some of these things, like giant camels, and not even that long ago. They're trying to say these were so long ago, but 12-foot tall camels, 20-foot tall sloths, beavers the size of black bears, giant animals, things like that.
It has. I was just watching something recently about this, and they were asserting it has something to do with more oxygen concentration and different air pressure, or something. Was it air pressure or something else?
Right. So there was the vapor canopy thing.
Well, isn't that a big part of like some of the like firmament stuff where people theorized that we lived under a sort of electrified ice sheet that was in our atmosphere, and then when that was destroyed, that's why everything flooded. And in this sort of ice canopy, the oxygen level would have been higher. It would have supported immense plant life, giant trees.
Did that come down in the Great Flood? Is that what the Great Flood was, like the melting ice or something?
That's part of the theory. Yeah, is that this it had some sort of connection to the electric.
You know who it was? It was one-on-one, the homunculus guy. I was reading something that he had posted. That's where I was reading about this, suggesting that mankind is like little, like half the size of like the organic man that was the original man, and we're like a creation of the original man, kind of like Louis Farrakhan. You know how like man was created by like a scientist on a satellite and then put him back on Earth like little men. So we're the little men.
Yeah, dude, but there is a lot of stories about the vaporous firmament, waters above the firmament, and here's 1980s cassette tapes on Noah's Ark in Turkey somewhere, right? Do you remember this? When they were telling you that they found Noah's Ark on top of not Kilimanjaro. What's the other one?
Oh, it's a mountain in Turkey. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Mount Arafat. Yeah, that's I think what it is. And so, and that's, of course, it has to be Turkey all the time. Everything comes back to Turkey. It's just completely. But there's a lot of these things. So the Gigantropithecus, right, is, and this is him calmly like not standing upright, because that would offend people. But if he stood upright and you compared it to like the Anunnaki, you know, next to human giants. I don't know. Show me a picture of giants next to humans. This idea of humans being like 6 foot tall, 36 foot tall, whatever. That's where you start, maybe like 24 foot. It's 18 foot.
I got to refer back to Marvel Comics again, because Ant-Man, Giant Man, the same guy, like he figures out like this equation. There's like a specific height that a human can go up to, and it's like 32 feet or something. Like I forget exactly.
Right. Right. It's like 36 in the other, because of course with gas and your heart could explode or something like that. Right?
Like that. Yeah.
Yeah. That is basically why they're saying that this animal would have been not able to stand up. But they're feasible, but they said, okay, well, he's probably not standing up straight, except for in brief periods or things like that, which we've seen the pelvis. And the idea of Gigantropithecus is really just that we found really large bones of humans or gorillas, depending in different circumstances. Here's a jaw, it's this. I just saw an elephant jaw earlier, and now I'm surprised. So elephant.
It's definitely a vegetarian jaw.
Look at the elephant skull. If you look at an elephant skull, it actually looks weirdly more like if you just have the bottom part of the jaw, it's easier now to understand how they're confusing things when they only find one bone. And they don't know exactly what they're saying about it. But yeah, I mean, giants, I think giants everywhere. That seems like more and more we're finding bones that we're accepting as giants. And then we're saying, oh, but this couldn't be a very educated thing or a bipedal thing or something like that. Just covering it up.
That's rude.
What if
you uneducated giant ape?
Yeah, right.
These uneducated elephants.
What was the Geico caveman commercials? Remember? It's like,
I believe in a caveman can do it.
Yeah, and they're like, dude, that's so racist. Like, just because we're Neanderthals, like they don't realize, like, we're people too. We could do stuff. Yeah.
They found a 13-foot giant bear in Scotts Valley. You ever heard
really?
That?
No,
yeah,
but I believe it.
Right there at the Santa Claus village or whatever. Do you remember the Santa Claus village in Scotts Valley?
Yeah, giant bear, Scotts Valley. I'm looking up.
So they have a bunch of things that they won't accept in science. They're saying, oh, all these tools and everything, the age on them are too old for what we'll accept. So they forced Scotts Valley downtown to just to hold all these artifacts. And one of the things they found was a 13-foot or 16-foot, something like that, giant bear, right? It was the ancestor of the grizzly. And, we had the largest in California. We made extinct the largest grizzly, not all the grizzlies, but a very specific type, a California grizzly, right?
Mm.
So we have this giant bear. And then on our flag, we have the grizzly bear, and then we have something bigger than it, right? Which is interesting. It's Minerva.
Is that a California gold bear?
the on our California flag, right?
Minerva is on the California flag.
It's the extinct giant bear, the giant golden bear, right? I think that's the deal.
Yeah.
Golden bear, show me somewhere. Golden bear.
About like the seal has this.
Yeah, our state seal. Yeah, our California state seal. Sorry, I said flag, but I meant seal.
That's right.
Right.
That's
Which you're talking about the Eureka thing. Yeah, right.
Yeah, look how small the bear is.
Yeah.
That's Minerva, right? They're showing you with that size difference.
And there's a dude too to show you how big a dude is. There's a dude pickaxing.
Yeah, so he's getting some gold, right?
Right, and she's all huge.
Would slaughter him real fast.
Well, this was a big thing, the idea that California was run by giant women, or at least that giant women were a metaphor for free women who owned property and ran parts of society. But I mean, it could easily be,
yeah, Califia, the Amazon woman, right? The story of the Amazon.
Yeah. Comic books again, Amazon.
This is Wonder Woman. This is the back to comic books. They have it in there for sure.
Right.
Yeah, there's only one story and it's true. And if you try to diverge from it and create stories that diverge from the true story, people reject them automatically.
They don't like it. Yeah.
Right, like badly seasoned food or something. And that's something that's I think we're going to talk about later, but
right. So we talked about the vaporous times. I think we're getting to let's get into this one really quickly as we get out of giant things though. Also, why human brains were bigger 3,000 years ago. And there's a bunch of these articles that are coming out really recently trying to excuse stuff that we've been talking about for the last few years about how humans, according to anthropology, before when they were nomadic, lived decades longer, were a foot taller, and etc. And it's all accepted at this point. They're just trying to make people more comfortable with it. That over the last period of agriculture, we didn't eat as well as when we had the diversity of our diets running around. We didn't interact as much. And so more recently, and they're saying it was a really long time ago, but probably not, probably within the last 1,000 years, we started to devolve, whatever we call that.
Yeah, you'll eat the grains and live in the hut. Where's your meme? Right, and that I mean, the stunting of human potential.
And where is that meme? That's fair. Hold on,
it's a great meme. Sorry, I didn't mean to make you go dig for it.
No, it's okay. I feel there it is. Yeah,
there it is. You'll eat the grains and you'll live in the hut.
Yeah, it's it's the rules as old as time as ever been.
And this ties into what we were talking about last week too, with 2001 and the monolith. I guess the monolith came up today too. In 2001, it's shown that the apes are vegetarian. Then the monolith comes and they start using tools to kill each other, and then they learn how to eat meat. And then you extrapolate from there, we become humans that are flying around in spaceships in 2001. And then you take the meat out of the diet, you replace, a portion of it with grains, with bugs, with other things. And it would make sense that the brain would shrink and the body would shrink. And of course, environmental poisons can tie into that. And there is some obvious movement towards limiting the potential of human growth, both physically and metaphorically, which sucks. Yeah. I'm against it, by the way. I'm not in favor of that.
Do you guys feel that though? Do you think we're getting do you think we're shrinking?
I'm 6'8". I'm proof that we're not.
Are you 6'8"?
Yeah.
For real?
I'll stand up. I'll prove it.
Well, that doesn't do anything. You need to do like the flag and get a regular dude standing next to you. He's 6'8". That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow, dude.
He's the real giant, Mark.
Yeah, you're a giant, bro. Nephilim. Yeah. I had no idea.
I can't really prove it. I mean, you guys don't know how short my girlfriend is, so if she came in here and stood next to me, it'd still be a guessing game. But yeah,
hold up a coin, right? They always put a coin next to things.
But yeah, okay. Unless you and Owen Benjamin have like a dozen. Well, good job, Owen. But as many kids as possible. Wow, there you go. That's pretty
crazy.
We believe
it. Protractor.
Nice. Yeah, so I mean, but do you okay? So people in the military, they go and they draft the tall people and kill them off, and then models, they get as many poor girls that are tall, and then they try to breed them off or something like that. What's going on? Do you think that there's a control of tallness, of the tall genetics of the giants?
People my height don't get any favors unless you're good at sports, like even in the military, if you're over a certain height, you're less useful, right? If you're taller than 6'5", you're kind of in that weird range of like, all right, you're kind of too big, you know, we don't have enough equipment for big guys like you. So I don't know how true that is, but I do think that statistically speaking, it's part of like you know, this sort of like blending of different cultures just naturally, you know, it's gonna, the oddities of our, you know, human expression are sort of going to be genetically filtered out over time. You know, like the height thing, I think, comes from people who lived primarily in really cold places. When you're tall, you're sort of more able to exist in like high altitude, lower temperature environments. I think that's the theory, is how
What
certain.
about like Inuits? They're pretty short.
Yeah, there was
There
lots
you
of
go.
midget. That's the thing, is there was
Yeah.
tons of midgets. This is the story of the leprechauns and all this stuff. So there was both sides. What we're coming to is we're coming to a balance. We're coming into a balance between the past and you know, some of the modern things that we've gone through. I don't think that it has anything to do with you know, just being having a meat diet or having a vegetarian diet. Obviously, anything that makes meat tasty or anything like that has a vegetarian component. It has the herbs and the spices and all the stuff that are vegetable. You're actually getting more of the nutrition that you need from all the additives that you're putting on, all the herbs and spices, than you are from the actual meat. And those animals that you're eating are all vegetarian. So it's called a tertiary diet that you're getting when you're having the third level of it. So you're losing some because some of it they can't digest, especially if you got factory farmed animals. Right. And what we're doing is we're coming to a time where we're mixing technology and we're also going back a little bit. If you notice, people are seeking out land. They're starting to go back to farming. They're starting to go back to community and village and stuff like that. So we're just seeking balance. You'll notice with people, they'll do these extreme reactions. You know what I mean? They'll have some sort of problem with the process that they're doing, and they'll go to the exact opposite end of the scale. That's their reaction, is just run all the way over here. You know, oh, I was a liberal and then something happened and I just went, oh, I'm going to go completely to the opposite side. What we need to do is we just need to seek balance, you know, and a lot of us can do that, but not enough. Yeah, there's not enough of us that are actually really looking at everything: our diet, the way we communicate, our the setup of our communities, the way that we think about how to structure our living dynamics, our homes, our villages, our communities, and stuff like that. There's a lot we can learn from the past and not just completely destroy it, where we need to look like, how did these people structure these county interactions, right? Why would you go to these county boards and talk about all the details of how to lay out the area that you're living in and how to work with these other people? We don't work with anybody else anymore. You know what I mean? When we go to, you know, even Alex Stein or Alex Jones or any of that, they go to these community meetings, these city meetings, and they just complain. Right. I mean, and that's better than what we've been doing before that, where we weren't doing anything. We weren't interacting with our cities or our city councils or counties or anything like that. But you actually are supposed to be working with them and educating them, because they're not really understanding, right? When it comes to codes and all this stuff, zoning, they don't know. They just say, this is what the zoning is. They'll tell you. You know, I've worked with a lot of realtors and everything, finding properties, getting places rezoned, because that needs to happen. That's a healthy process of building out a city structure. And there needs to be people that understand the environment, all these new things like, hey, the geology here needs to be structured right, or you have a failure of the landscape, right? Also, you know, if you go and destroy this waterway and everything, we're not going to have the diversity of animal life, and you know, it's going to cause disease. There's all these things that we've learned as humans over time, and we need to implement all those things now together into this new frame that we're getting into. And it takes balance. You know, you're going to need to have both, and we're going to need to communicate and hear each other out. And that's a part of the process of why the internet's popped up and things like what we're doing. We're talking.
Do you think we'll get bigger again, or do you think it's just a shrinking where humans just continue to shrink?
I think we will go towards the middle ground, and whatever that middle ground is will show itself. And I think it's more, you know,
because we're seeing now like a planned increase in the poisoning. You know, we had the CDC vote today, came out 15-0 in favor of adding the I don't even know if I can say it, but the CV to the V schedule. for all American school children to attend public school. So, I mean, that's certainly not going to increase brain dimensions or, physical health in any way.
And this is the part, like, this is how we got to think always is, okay, they're going to do this. Then what do we do with our children? You got to step it. You got to try to step it up. And I know there's always going to be a thing to like, okay, well, you say that, but everybody can't do it. You see what I'm saying? Why is it that everybody can't do it? It's because that either their family ahead of time has failed to put in things into the scenario to make sure. My parent, and I tell people this all the time, and we just have to admit this, our parents failed us. You know what I mean? Just plain and simple.
Oh yeah,
they did. And our grandparents failed us in a lot of ways. They put us into these cities, they got sucked into the trap, and they put us into a scenario, and then they slowly started getting sucked into the system where it's like, okay, we can depend on this food source, and because I trust the neighbor, I trust the politician, I trust the city council member, or this or that or whatever. And those are little failures, because the devil is there to trick us. The duality of this world is there's always an element that's going to sit there and it's going to lure you in by saying, here's all these things that I offer you. Let go of the responsibility here, there, and whatever. And that's over our children and everything. Back in the day, a lot of the farming communities and stuff like that, they educated their children on their own. Like the most they ever let their kid go to was like till 6th grade. It was like very rare. And if you look at the tests that those kids took in the 6th grade, they would pass tests that were harder than college students nowadays.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I'm rereading Huck Finn right now, and like he has like no school learning at all, and like doesn't really understand the rubric of school learning. But when he's out there surviving in nature on his own, he knows the use of every plant. He understands the stars. Like he's just like has like tons of knowledge that I don't have.
Yes.
You guys remember,
way.
Jerry Brown, governor of California. I don't know if he still is. I try not to think about it as much as possible. But if you remember Jerry Brown from before governor thing, it's sad when you just said, because like in terms of people failing, but also you got to remember what it was like to be a farmer and rely on food, because they could literally just kill your entire crop. And the medflies is a great example. Governor Jerry Brown had made sure to get radiated fruit flies from Mexico to kill the medflies, but they were not actually radiated correctly, or they weren't infertile from it. So all he did was increase the problem of medflies and basically blight the entire California agriculture. So anybody who had these farms across California was just, they couldn't recoup. There was no crop, and then they also had to pay for a bunch of other things. And there's a lot of interesting stories here about the gay bathhouse, but I'll leave it at that. I think in terms of Jerry Brown,
they sorry to talk so much, but what they do is they devastate us by setting up scenarios like that. You never, when you have an abundance of rats or something, because you have these grain silos that you're not taking care of and stuff like that, you don't come and bring in the cats to eat all the rats, and then you have an abundance, and you're not keeping control of the cats, and then you have abundance of cats. It just creates problem after problem. These are old environmental stories that are, hundreds of years old, if not thousands of years. This goes back to Egypt.
It's the story of Australia. They had like nothing but marsupials, and then they brought in animals to hunt. And like it's still to this day, they're like, add a few wolves, like try some more spiders. It's like, like literally.
This is where mankind needs to come in and have some balance in the approach to what they do, and not just use these techniques without having control over the techniques that they're doing. And usually these politicians are controlled. Like they're doing it on purpose. They're coming in, they're devastating these farmers because they want these farmers to be under their thumb. That's the end result. You know what I mean? And if you look at the whole story, we're all well enough educated. We've seen, Fast Food Nation and all this stuff. They've been doing this very carefully. Like you can even look at the names of the characters involved in all these stories, and it all relates to demonic symbology, right? They're doing this, they're tempting us, and they're allowing us to have access to the progression only so that they can ruin us. They can get us to be lazy and not take over all these aspects ourselves. And then they come in and they say, hey, well, we got a solution for you, right? They're causing the problem, and they're coming up with a solution. The solution is always just more problems, right? So humanity just needs to learn, hey, look, I can't have them control every aspect. I got to make sure that I'm going to take over all these features yourself. And we got to work our way backwards a little bit. And we got to come to that balance. I think that's the
and
big
have
issue.
like the generational thinking, because the people who are, you know, pushing us in the wrong direction, like aren't worried about like human lifespans. Like they have these like 1,000-year plans. And maybe that's why Hillary Clinton in the WikiLeaks emails was looking for Gilgamesh's resurrection chamber. You know, they've got like, we got some people to resurrect over here, like bring back Epstein. We're going to need him. You know, we got these like long-term plans. It would it would be so great to be able to like actually understand what their long-term plans are. And
if we look at history, we can find it though. That's the thing, is what they represent is in mythology and everything. They represent these, you can call them the Naga or whatever, you can call them the demons. They represent something that is their facet, and their approach to everything is we are expendable, because ultimately we are all immortal. Technically, our body isn't. And so they come at it in an approach that we have to get humanity to march in line and do certain things so that we can progress them down the line, so that we can get towards fixing it. And this is what getting back to the medicine Buddha, this is, you know, the Maitreya Buddha, what he's talking about is like, look, even though you may think of them as negative and bad and all this stuff, they do have a purpose, because we wouldn't progress. We would get comfortable in niche areas and stuff like that, and we would just stay there. You see a lot of animals actually do that. They just get locked into a niche and they'll get perfected in that thing, and they won't move on to it, because unless something changes in the environment to force them out of it. And that's what's happening, is that they are playing this role where they're forcing us out of our comfort zone. And we can't.
I mean, that's the definition of progressivism, you know. And I often wonder, like, first of all, I agree with you that, like, I think they're right that like mortality is kind of like irrelevant, because you know, we are eternal beings, just not the physical form. But I also think that it's a mistake to create copious amounts of suffering, because I think suffering is like some sort of like distortion or pollution that has like will like mess you up long term. So it might be irrelevant what happens to our bodies, but I think all the suffering they create in the world like is totally relevant.
And that's what they're doing is they don't have any stops on what they do, because they have a certain view, right? And they're doing a certain thing. Our job is the reverse of that, right? We have to not let them get us to the point. But it takes we like to seek balance. Humans or things that are like, you know, like-minded.
I feel you, but what do you think about technology though? Is technology itself like, and I'd like to hear what Xirtus says about this too, because he's like a futurist. Is technology itself just a tool to drive us, you know, further in the wrong direction? Or is there some, you know, because we've seen every advent of technology negatively affects our lifespan and our overall physical health and stuff like that. Is there some kind of turning point where like technology and futurism like takes off, and all of a sudden we're getting healthier and happier again?
That's up to us.
What do you think, Xirtus? What do you think about that?
So it's interesting, because I keep thinking maybe at one point we'll explain to people who don't know what the word Maitreya means, that it's like the future Buddha. And I keep trying to wonder about that as well, because I remember a few years ago somebody made a conspiracy theory YouTube video about Bill Maher saying he was actually religious, and he was making all this stuff saying he was against religions, mainly to say how he was against all these other religions because he was secretly a Saturnian, and he was into the idea of bringing forth the new Buddha, the new Maitreya. And the idea of the Maitreya is so interesting, because it's always like, someday my prince will come, you know, like Christ is going to be here, or it's going to be the return of, you know, the wisdom that we had in the past, but it's going to be a new wisdom, because the wisdom's going to change. So it gets confusing when we say, you know, will technology destroy us? Because whatever will destroy us will be material, because the material is energy traveling slow enough to be seen. So we could say anything is that, but it's also going to be that which saves us. Probably. I don't think it's going to be just a feeling that saves you. I mean, it will be in the sense that will affect all the material. It has to be intention behind it, but it's going to take lots of work one way or the other. You can either automate your, you know, demise or your development.
And do you believe it's all natural? Like it's just part of like whatever humans really are, you know, in this DMT realm or all that, you know, the bigger picture. Is it just like a human function to create technology, like ants make anthills and bees make honey and stuff, or is it unnatural?
That's a great question. I wonder about that. I think it's
it's not nature.
A more specific strain of that question I think about is, whether or not
it's the concepts, the ideas in our head are natural, right? Or are those unnatural?
That's the thing. So are the concepts implanted, because your brain is wet wired from being taught. You don't know a lot of these ideas, and if you didn't have humans around you, you wouldn't develop into the kind of human that can think about.
But I mean, all ideas are native to somewhere. They're not coming from like another matrix, like hacking into our reality. Like all concepts.
I don't know about that.
Reality.
Because the idea that we are a nervous system antenna, and then that the brain is being used to process that kind of data, and that the brain is developing around the kind of data that it's dealing with. And for whatever reason, we've been taught mother to son, for father to son, for so many generations back. We don't know, but like as far back as it seems, that we can think about these thoughts. And that's amazing, but we don't know. It could have been that we were taught that thought from an AI or from a portal or something like that. But now that we're able to think about it, out of sight, out of mind, in sight, right? If you didn't think about it, you wouldn't see it. But since you think about it, you see it, and since you see it, you think about it, and it becomes unequivocal. So I don't think that we're going to move beyond that unless we develop a thing that can teach us more. So if we develop an AI that's smarter than us, I think we can become smarter because we can interact with it and learn from it, right? But also, if we didn't talk to her, if we didn't have any children-parent interaction, then no, we would not be where we're at, and humans would not be thinking this way. And you could take MRIs of humans raised by wolves, and they aren't able to.
They don't develop the language center. Yeah.
They don't have the parts of the brains to even think about those kinds of symbolic, and think about what that even means. Symbolic language in terms of symbolic programming, right?
Because like we've really
programming.
We've decided as a species on both sides to use technology to get us where we want to go. Like there's like Amish and stuff like that, and people that want to go back to the land, but there's no
Amish churn butter though, and they have wheels, and so the idea that they don't have
like locked in the technology of that time.
That's what I'm saying. There's no plan to like regress our brains to like a wolf state and just live like in the garden, walk around on all fours and be naked. Like no one really has like a concrete plan to do.
There are cat fetishists that are taking over our schools and Walmarts now, but
I think the elite would prefer something like that, where they were maybe like living in underground bunkers in like ultra fortified cities, and the rest of us are like virtually tribal, like living off the land and farmed essentially when they need us. And that's kind of like the push to put us in smart cities and keep us off of the national park space, right? At least maybe that's the plan here in the States. Little pessimistic, but definitely a possibility considering all the mountain bunker bases that they've already built.
Yeah.
I just think about all the people, now that you mentioned the regression thing, there are so many people that want to do an OnlyFans where they're a baby or a cat. And so it is interesting because we are socially accepting or socially promoting, not we, but the Tavistock system seems like it's a great thing because, hey, look, these people, they feel free by wanting to be regressed animals. And so, yeah,
I mean, if we give up technology, our ability to influence other people and spread our ideas is just terminated unless there's some other way to do that.
But that's the thing. So when you give up technology, then you end up it's in the machine, right? So if you don't control the weather, then you're going around under the rainstorm, or if you're still going to have to live off the fruit of the trees that grow, if they exist or not. So having some say in things, and that's an interesting thing, that one of the earliest technologies we had was techno-Gaianism, like shaping, geoengineering, shaping the world, planting the kinds of trees that we like to eat from. And that's the kind of technology we're just now hopefully about to learn again, and everyone's forgotten completely. And we've talked about how farming is controlled to the point of
everyone's really forgotten. I'm from New York City, and it's like, what kind of trees are these? And people are just like, I have no idea. And it's like, never even think why they don't have fruit because they're male, or you know what I mean? It's just like no connection with reality.
Right.
Yeah.
But the most advanced connection with the future, you know what I mean? The way things are going, like New Yorkers in Californians have like a way stronger connection to that than people who live in less developed areas and interact with the land more. So it's like two different kinds of intelligence. But it's hard. I think it's hard for the second kind of intelligence, the live off the land kind of intelligence, to have any effect on the people building technologies and planning for the future. Like,
yeah.
Well, to connect the dots back to how we started, and I agree with you about New York City. But New York City, if you could pull up an image of Manhattan, it looks just like not particularly like a serpent, but it almost looks. Peter Shampoo puts in his book that it looks like a womb, and Manhattan is sort of the penis inseminating, and you have this sort of energy here where the Big Apple, right, is this big cultural center of inspiration. That map might be a little too zoomed in. Maybe just go to there you go. There's one to the left of that one.
Kind of like a Shiva lingam, right?
Yeah, it's sort of it. That's the impression. If you were able to zoom out even further, you'd see like that piece of land that Manhattan's connected to. It's connected to the rest of New England, the landmass that I'm on. The Hudson River kind of separates it from the rest of the United States. But yeah, it is interesting. Like you have like the European influence of there you go. Yeah, you have like the European influence of the East coming in through New England and inseminating the rest of the world in New York. York being like the place where the first Freemason lodge was, and all this other English historical.
Crazy negative energy there. I'm from Manhattan. It's just like I'm afraid to ever go back. I don't have any family there anymore. I don't think I'll ever go back. But if you guys have never seen it, you've got to watch Colin Quinn's History of New York. It's the greatest thing ever. It's like a 1 hour spoken word comedy thing, and you know, it's unbelievable, the history of New York. You know, starting with I forget what Indians there were that were tobacco traders, and
really he does a whole thing. That's awesome.
It's amazing. He does a few things like this. He does a history of the world. He does a history of New York, a New York story, I think it's called. He's unbelievable. He's a genius.
Andreas and I talked about this in one of our first conversations about the Star Fort in Manhattan, and that was built by the Dutch, we believe, possibly incorrect, but at least we're told in history books.
That's they take credit for it at least.
Yeah. So, but yeah, you're absolutely right. Like New York has this crazy history. I'll say, as someone living in Connecticut, like we're sort of like in one foot in Connecticut, 1 foot in New York, you know, like New Yorkers don't like people from Connecticut because we all like work there and then live here. But I've always loved like just going to the city and then being able to leave, you know, because it's an interesting chaos, but you don't want to like spend your whole life there because it does transform you. Like to Seth's point, like he doesn't even want to go back.
Some people love it, and I just don't love it.
When I was younger, I loved it. You know, there was a period of my life where I really enjoyed it.
I don't know how I don't. So the thing that blows my mind more than anything are like the little old ladies that live in New York all their lives, because that is the most powerful person. I mean, like, let's see if I can. If you can survive,
they're
New York,
tough, man. They're leather.
Who can survive New York City? Like it's.
I mean, now they're getting like attacked by gangs of kids and stuff. It's gotten a lot worse even than when I lived there.
Dude,
so
I want to make a movie though about a little old lady that's just more terrifying than any Jeffrey Dahmer. I tell you what.
Want to point out, do we need the visual reference for what a little old lady looks like? You were so quick on that one. Every other visual reference, you're like 5 minutes away from going, little old lady got it.
But you know what? Little old ladies.
They're tough.
Shout out to the grandmas, you know.
Yeah.
Actually, I do have some kind of like horrible pop culture stuff that I want to cover too. But if you want to continue, we can go deeper into this. Is there more there?
Little old ladies.
No, yeah.
Well, I think it all connects. I think pop culture, you know, it connects into the story of life and the way we tell stories. And like I was saying, like some stories are just true, and those are the ones people accept, and some stories don't make sense, and people reject them. And we're seeing it.
She-Hulk.
Is audio going to come out of this? No audio there. What is up with that? How do I get audio?
You might need to reshare and click like a certain setting in your settings before you share.
That looked like an ice cold take from Simon Pegg.
Yeah, it was.
But I thought it was another little old lady, dude. I was like,
he is a little old lady.
We're going from little old ladies to She-Hulks.
Yeah,
fully guaranteed. Audio.
Wait, is he playing She-Hulk? Is he appropriating the?
No, he just thought he had to talk some smack. So I don't know, but it wasn't seeming like I can share my audio. I don't know if I'm having. If you guys, I saw someone else share audio earlier. Mark, can you try to do this for me?
Sure.
You want to try to share this file? I'll just put this in
earlier, but I'll try.
I'll put this in the private chat. If you can get the audio to play, that'd be worth it, just so you can hear him say it. But it's not that important.
What's the gist of what he says?
Yeah, it's not that important. Basically, he says, if you can get it to work, though, it's like She-Hulk is the best thing that Marvel has done since Endgame. And it was just...
Oh, yeah, there's a little clicker. You got to click share system audio. Here we go.
Oh.
You guys ready for this?
Yeah, that wasn't there for me.
Are you seeing it? Am I sharing?
Yeah, I see it.
There you go.
I just watched the finale of She-Hulk, Attorney at Law, and I've got to say, I think that show is the best thing Marvel have done since Endgame. I think it's fucking brilliant. It's really funny. I love its self-reflexivity. That last episode was like blazing fucking saddles. It was great. Tatiana Maslany is the bomb, and I would like to marry her in an alternate dimension.
Oh, that's sad.
I just watched the finale of...
I'm trying to be objective. No, yeah.
That's like Jim Carrey. He sent like a video message to Emma Stone, and he's like, "If I was a younger man, he's like, you're so beautiful. I would give you the happiest life." And it's just like, bro, like this is pathetic.
It just reminded me of Matthew McConaughey and his sad, at Uvalde. It was like it didn't feel sincere. You know, it was like,
well, here's what they did with She-Hulk is they tried to go away from traditional storytelling.
Right.
You
I want to. For those of you, because here's the thing, I'm gonna guess that like myself, most of you have not seen She-Hulk, but if you have, good for you. But I'm sorry, I don't know which way to go with it. But what he's saying here, why did he say that? Because the thing is, right now, a bunch of people are upset at She-Hulk because they ended it with this like fourth wall breaking fu to toxic Marvel trolls. Spoiler alert: the whole show was about how much they think you suck, their fan. Right. I think that's the point. But yeah, maybe you can explain better, Seth.
I don't know if I can explain better. I mean, I can tell you my take on it is, you know, it's postmodernism, you know, like there are no rules, you know, there's no rules to art. There's no rules to stories, but there actually are. It's like the laws of physics, you know, people talk about law. People talk about laws all the time. Like it's a law. There's a speed limit. It's like, look, I just broke it. Like you can't break laws, you know? So that's like a suggestion or something else. But a law is like day following night. What goes up must come down and stuff like that. And, you know, stories are true. And they've been doing this all throughout pop culture. Like a great example is Star Wars. It's like a perfect 3-act story. Three 3-act stories. And then they come with the sequels, and there's already existing canonic books that continue that story in another 3 acts. And they said, not only are we not going to continue the story in a way that makes sense and people demand, we're also not going to have like acts or a plot or anything, you know. And people just they're trying to do something to us. Like they're trying to separate us from like the fact that like life is a true story. You know what I mean? They're like, no, like fake stories are also true, but people aren't going to buy into this. And it's not even a real fourth wall break what they did in She-Hulk, because it's still within their story. Like when you actually are breaking the fourth wall, and that's something like I think we're going to start to discover in reality, like a concept we'll start to explore, like breaking like the fourth wall of reality. You know what I mean? Because we've had since Ferris Bueller, people turn to camera. Turning to camera really isn't breaking the fourth wall anymore. Dude. You know.
Thank you for saying that, because like that's whenever I really get depressed, it's mainly the first thing is I hear myself yelling at myself. It's like, all you do is break the fourth wall every day. That's like my main, and I tell myself to be quiet. Keep going.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't even have my thoughts totally organized on this. I just think it's amazing that they started with like a give me. They're like, we've discovered we can just take comic book stories that already exist, characters, people just want to see them look, you know, we have the technology, we can make She-Hulk appear exactly like she did in the comics. You know, it's like everything is laid out before you. We've printed money with this. Like the first 10 years of Marvel, they're just like, wow, like we've taken over like all of entertainment. And then they're like, but we hate ourselves so much, and we hate our fans so much, and we despise our success so much that we're going to invert everything. We're actually going to take apart what a story is and try to just waste people's time. If you're basically, if people are expecting a story and you don't give them a story, you're just wasting their time. And that's what She-Hulk is just a waste of time. There's no plot, there's no rising action, there's no climax, there's no denouement. They're just like, here's a thing that took up time in your life. And if that's what Netflix becomes a bunch of non-stories, then you won't even have like a rubric for for like you know, the way information is organized.
And by the way, there's a way to do a non-story. Ferris Bueller took a day off, and there were 15 beats, like any proper script. You know what I mean? He broke the fourth wall, and it still worked. There's a way to like actually, you know, to do that. But it's in terms of rules, like, you know, don't make an 11-hour movie that has no beats or plot changes. Yeah, it's not going to work. You know,
I mean, this is like a different level of breaking the fourth wall.
Because a miniseries is like 11-hour long movie that sucks, is what it is.
It's like, imagine an actor turning to camera and being like, "I'm sorry, you guys. Like, we really tried hard, but we're out of time. There's only 15 minutes left in the show, and like, we didn't have a plot. We weren't able to wrap this up." That's like a way different level than just turning to camera and making a joke, winking at the camera. You know,
you're like, "Don't worry, we got another episode. We just keep going." It's like, what are you?
I've never seen it before. They're just like, "We quit. Like, we didn't have a story. Like, we can't wrap this up." It's like unbelievable.
It's a part of the conditioning. It's a process. It's like, okay, we got everybody to this point. The whole "Our Gods Wear Spandex," Chris Knowles' book, creating this like new man, right? This Ubermensch sort of idea, and everybody became that. And now what is the main progressive thought? Life is meaningless. We're atheists, we're secular, and now we have meaningless movies that are supposed to be reflections of reality. No, this is a entrainment. They realize the power of media, and they've entrained us over a series of generations to this point where they're like, okay, we've got.
Do you think it's intentional, like they're intentionally making bad products, or do you think that they've philosophically embraced postmodernism to the extent where they actually believe this is a good idea and it's going to work?
It's not even them. It's the intelligentsia of the world. The tastemakers are influenced by them, and they craft the plot, so to speak. You know, and I guess this is one culprit. I don't tend to finger any one group. I think it could be a number of different groups working in concert. But yeah, I think that's the gist of it. It's like it's this trickle down of ideas from the elite. And that's why you see these concepts like, we don't even respect our audience because they're like, you little punks, we printed money off of you. Who cares? We're going to discard you because we're the elite and this is what we do. And you've just been entrained by our psychodrama theater. The world is a stage.
So, yeah, like the way they've said.
No disrespect to the actual Fabian Society, which of course is only so complicit in this, not entire, you know, whatever how far it is. But the reason is because Fabian Steps refers to Fabius, and the idea of if you take little battles and you win them, then eventually enough little battles wins a war. And so gradualism. So Fabianism is to, over the generations, episodically mind control and neurolinguistically program people. And that is.
Imagine the danger. Look at the results of separating us from the land, like everything like Giant talks about, separating us from like natural ways in nature, and not even like knowing what kind of trees you're surrounded by or why they have fruit or don't have fruit. Imagine separating people from like the reality of like stories, that like life contains true stories. Imagine if you can populate all of entertainment with things that don't even have a story structure, and like separate people from the idea of archetypes, you know, like try to remove our understanding of archetypes, so you don't automatically look like at a Dr. Fauci or George Soros and be like, that's a supervillain. Like, obviously I know that from stories, you know? So like,
wow,
it's almost like they're trying to steal stories away from us now.
Pixar doing that too. What's the Pixar movie? Wreck-It Ralph. Every Pixar movie, find one that doesn't do this, but the bad guy always looks like the good guy now at the beginning. Right, like so the good guy is always a bad guy out of place. Everyone thinks he's a bad guy, but it turns out he's the good guy. It's always the devil, right? Kind of a thing. And then, but where's the little sugar freaking guy? Like the sugar. If I just
Princess Penelope.
No, she's all right. That guy, this guy here, he's like King Candy, right? Well, King Candy turns out to be the bad guy because, of course, he is nice and everything. That you can't trust the nice person. And all the archetypes have been shifted backwards for kids these days.
Well, at least that still embraces like archetypes and acknowledges that, like with shows like She-Hulk and with the Star Wars sequels. Like when you watch the Star Wars sequels, it's just like, oh, it's almost confusing. You're just like, what are they even? Were they even attempting to tell a story? And it's almost like they're intentionally like, we don't have to. Like we're better than that. We've evolved past stories. You know, we just give you chaos.
Yeah.
But it's something significant. We've never seen this happen. We've never seen a company just commit suicide like this. It's like as if Jeep would just start making like, you know, you know, we'll put the wheels on the top. It doesn't matter. You know, the tires will go on the top now. And it's just like, these don't work. These, you can't even drive these on the road. It's like, we're watching like the most successful corporation in like the history of entertainment just commit suicide.
Well, so part of the thing though is that if you know, it might be that if you study writing a bunch and you learn about formula, you get bored knowing that this is the logical way that pachinko formula will end up. So it becomes more interesting to the writers to only tell stories about more amoral characters that have you can't be sure what they're going to do. I mean, if you take away you can be sure.
Oh, it's very interesting when you try to do like drag queen story hour and like legal, you know, like all this is like very interesting. You can't take that away from them. It's all of one cloth.
That does feel like the whole point, though, is it's like just to see you have no idea, and you can hedge your bets in the total chaos of what happens.
The reason they have to do this with existing franchises like Star Wars is so you're like, it's always been this way. Even Star Wars doesn't make sense. There's no stories or characters. You know, it's like, you know,
I don't know.
If you were to create a new property that's not even attached to Marvel or Star Wars and attempt to like have that low level of storytelling and just like no archetypes, like if people would reject it automatically. That's why they have to package it in something you're already familiar with and think you like.
Coinophilia, thanks. I've been like for a couple days now. This is the tab I've been hoping to segue into. I was like, somebody's going to make it possible. So thank you. So the reason I've been wanting to bring it up, Coinophilia, aside from the fact that it sounds like it, like Coinophilia, which is the one that's against you love clowns. I always get that one confused. Anyway, it doesn't matter right now. This is about the evolutionary hypothesis proposing that during sexual selection, animals preferentially seek mates with a minimum of unusual mutant features. So, for instance, this leucistic Indian peacock, so an albino peacock, unlikely to find a mate in nature. Right. Humans, however, might be like, dude, we like this. Let's make
like the sexy mole. Remember in the 80s, every supermodel and actress all of a sudden had a sexy mole. Actually, ever since like Marilyn Monroe, it's like moles are good. To have a mole on your face is a good thing, but that is, you know, naturally detracting from your symmetry.
Yeah, and it could end up being turmeric, you know, and you might have to have it removed for reasons. But
oh, they're beauty marks. Shut up, guys.
No, I mean,
I have them too, but you know,
yeah, like. Just saying,
I want to get rid of them.
But that became the archetype that you want a girl with a mole on her face. You know, like that was
Cindy Crawford, right?
Cindy Crawford. What's her name? Cindy Crawford. Pepsi commercial.
Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah. I mean, you know, but pretty soon that birthmark's going to be a penis. So just be careful with following trends.
Well, I think you said turmeric. It might turn into turmeric. I think you meant tumors, but
did I really? Did I really?
Turmeric.
Oh, that's brutal. It's like nuclear. Okay, but so the thing is, this is one thing that happens in nature when things are going well, right? When things are going well, you want to stick with it. You stick with what you got. If nothing's broke, you don't fix it. And this actually is a natural thing that happens if everything is in a stable society. When things start to go crazy, the opposite happens. And you actually get coinophobia, which is like, I don't think that this is going to work out. The only way I'd even consider breeding is if it was like so crazy that it was like it's finally got a chance, right? So that's where you get black moths taking over rainbow moth butterflies or whatever.
It's like perfect for the season, Nightmare Before Christmas, you know?
Right. What's a black moth?
And the dead girl, the ultimate romance.
So we're in the age of coinophobia, huh?
That would be coinophilia if I only liked other really tall people.
Asymmetrical haircuts.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, asymmetry is very in.
Yeah, and in general, this is something where we've noticed men do try to evolve to be unique, to have unique mutations, or to be as good as in general. As good as in general tends to be the norm. But if there's a fire, then this is how the peppered moth turned to black moths, because there was a huge fire, and so the only moths that survive are black moths. So then all of a sudden that's thrown out the window.
Isn't that the story of H.P. Lovecraft with the asymmetrical? Everything gets distorted, right? With the Cthulhu or whatever, right?
Brett, stop talking about clown love. No, it's okay. Thank you for the answer. Coinophilia, yeah. Wait, what about H.P. Lovecraft?
I think Cthulhu is he comes from another dimension, and like so he's extra dimensional. So the I forget the name of the protagonist, but he can't even look at it right. It's like looking at like a magic eye painting or something with like extra dimensions that your brain can't perceive.
Isn't the structures that come out of the waters and stuff like that, aren't they like all asymmetrical? And that's why you see a lot of these buildings, these art buildings and everything, they're all very weird. They don't have right angles. There's nothing that's really symmetrical or balanced about it. And that's like against what, you know, I would say that the true Masons that were really trying to develop structures and all that. Yeah, that it's against that. So that it was kind of talking like futuristically that these things that will prop up in our imaginations and in our culture are going to be all this distortion and everything's asymmetrical and you don't really know where the line is, where the horizon or anything is. You get lost.
I got to reread Cthulhu. I know it's only like an hour long or something.
Yeah, and it might have just been some other H.P. Lovecraft. Maybe it wasn't exactly in the Cthulhu.
I don't remember.
It's been a long time. Yeah, it's been a long time.
The old gods. The idea of the old gods.
Yeah, I thought it was in the structures of the old gods coming out of the waters or something, but it's been years, 20 years.
Yeah.
Mr. Douglas, re-record it and send us a copy. We'll listen to you do it. That'll be the way it goes. I'll AI animate it. It's going to be great. You know,
nice. Yeah, that's a good short one to pick.
God, but there's the idea of rats in a maze, the lack of morals, the evil Cthulhu, the mutations, Coinophilia, and then now we're in a position where so many people are looking for the opposite of what is natural, something that sticks out, something that's different, so that they can have a chance, something that they think, well, I can't do it on my own. And I think that might be actually the point in a lot of ways. That's probably the best place to be in a civilization, is in a situation where you're going to try new things and you're afraid of just leaving things the way they are. You know, I don't know. What do you think? Is that too chaotic?
I mean, we can't leave them the way they are now because we've already diverged from what's normal and successful. So now we either have to keep pushing into the great beyond or go. I don't think you can really regress. So we have to become progressives, but like choose our own path of progress and our own technologies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But eventually we do have to address so
I think an important thing right now is people are looking of who's to blame. And like something I really ask myself and wrestle with is there a specific villain that's to blame for this? Or are we just, is it a principality? Like it says in the Bible, like, you know, our enemy is principalities, like the ideas themselves, or like the vibe, the negative vibe. Or, you know, right now we have a huge movement. You can't even really talk about this on YouTube with Kanye, of blaming specific people, like, oh, okay, we found them, you know, run them out on a rail and then we'll all be happy and good. But really, I think this like degradation of our morals and our physical form and our cities and civilization and everything is kind of like we all bear like an equal part of the blame to it. I feel like
it's on all of us. Yeah, it's on all of us and all of our ancestors. We've all failed to hold up one element of what it means to be in this existence or not, no matter what. We can't be defeated. You gotta make yourself strong in every kind of aspect. So that means your physical body, what it is that you eat, what it is that you take in as information, right? We have to be defensive. You don't have to be offensive in this world. Like we don't really have to do anything to these characters that we think are at blame. All we have to do is not play their game anymore, really, right? And that's kind of, you know, Zeitgeist gets into that and everything.
Well, and that's
just quit playing their game.
That's the disappointing thing about Kanye's diatribe. It's like, you know, anytime you focus on a race, ethnicity, or religion, you're missing the point that we are dealing with a classist system. It doesn't matter what race, religion, each country has its own class system. There's very few countries where there isn't a class system that oppresses the lowest class. And that has been established through this colonial conquest, guys like Winston Churchill and so forth and so on, all the imperialists of his time. So,
empire models, right?
Yeah. So, I think Kanye, you know, he's sort of just probably, here we are on Wednesday Ultra. I would say he's probably MK Ultra. I mean, him, Pete Davidson, and all the other weirdos that have been with the Kardashians, they all seem to have fallen under some sort of sorcery.
And they all went blonde.
And there is like some kind of thing that connects the Kardashians to a witch cult in Hollywood. I'm not sure the specifics on that, but I do remember someone talking about that.
Yeah, when he got jaw wired shit, that was nuts. And then afterwards, the music, his music changed so much once he got in the car accident.
Why did they? Oh, that was as a result of a car accident.
Yeah, that was a story. So then eventually when he was able to make music again, he said what he was allowed to say, you know, that's at first, right? And so that's what's interesting is then he started saying stuff he wasn't allowed to say on the SNL thing, and then they abducted him and took him to the insane asylum and gave him like lithium and electroshock or something. I forget what they did exactly, but the Saturday Night Live thing.
Right.
Yeah.
He was like committed. He was like committed for saying, you know, things that they didn't like because he wasn't supposed to go off script, and then he did. And they're like, "Uh-oh, let's get him."
Yeah, the Kardashians are from the area where the story of the gypsies, right, and also the story of the vampires, right. It all comes from that same area. A lot of magic. That's where the magi and a lot of the magicians that actually moved down into Egypt and all the stuff moved magic around, and they were more technically looked at as the evil magicians and wizards and stuff like that. All came from the same area that their genetic heritage comes from. But obviously, I don't want to get into that like some sort of genetic thing. It's really that I think humans, all of us, are susceptible to partaking in the devil's delights by getting offered certain things, and then some of us get caught up in these things, and then we associate it with some sort of like religious affiliation or some sort of genetic affiliation or something like that. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with a spiritual
well, I would say it does have something to do with a religious affiliation, but not, I agree, not like genealogical.
It creates it. Yeah,
people are trying to conflate right now. You know, this is something that happens specifically with Judaism, trying to conflate an ethnicity with a belief system. Like a religion is a belief system. So you might be genealogically descended from people who did practice the Jewish religion. But even when you say Semitic, that includes Coptic Christians, tons of Muslims. I mean, you're basically talking about, you know, anyone from the east side of the Middle East, the Assyrians. So to try to, I think it's like, I don't think Kanye is doing it on purpose. I think he's trying to be good and like go, I like his direction, but I don't like attributing the actions that are only possible by people who specifically don't fear God to like the most God-fearing people. So when you use the word Jew to describe the people who run the media and stuff like that, it's like maybe genealogically, but like it's a much more important concept that like they don't fear God. You know what I mean? So it's like you're kind of mixing up like two opposite people and blaming like the exact opposite.
Well, it's just really funny because Owen Benjamin's going to be the guy to be like, dude, calm down, Kanye. Like that's going to be how it goes. And like, how did we get here? All right, go ahead, Mark.
Well, no, I was going to get into some stuff that's probably too controversial to talk about, but there are a lot of weird connections to the British government and Israel. So, you know, the word Jew.
That's true. You should be anti-British if you're going to choose.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Like the word, well, no, I'm just saying, like the word Jew could be applied to like so many different groups of people. You know, it's not just the people that live in Israel.
And I know, Sticky Marks, you're British, and we love you anyway. There's nothing that you could do to be better. So
we just can't allow the idea to be it's an either or. Either it's people who wear yarmulkes, fear God, practice the Sabbath, like the most by the book people, or either that, or it's people who came from the same place and they literally hate all that, you know. So it's like it's important to identify which one you're talking.
Similarly, it's interesting because like Muslims, people got really against Muslims for a while, and Muslims tend to be like, you know, they eat well, they're careful about chemicals in their food, they don't drink alcohol, pretty much the kind of people you want in your neighborhood a lot of the time.
Yeah, this is more on Benjamin territory, you know.
Yeah, they make everyone think like, oh, you should hate a group of people. The people that they pick. They even picked
this is exactly what
religion.
happened with Islamophobia too. The people who blow themselves up and try to harm people and they scream
not
God is great. I mean, those specifically, they're not Islamic. They're not practicing the tenets of the Islamic faith.
Yeah.
So it's like, and then we say that we have an Islamic terrorist problem. It's like there are no Islamic terrorists. It's literally a religion.
Let me do the Rick and Morty parable of snakes. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, if you have a.
Well, the people who make up the body of any one faith are always thrown under the bus first by their leaders and their extremists. It doesn't matter which group it is. That's typically the case. And with this like elitism, you have people who are not only wealthy enough to afford to spend a lot of their life, you know, thinking about these strange ideas, but they could actually do something about it. Whereas the majority of religious people are just, you know, in churches trying to get their life straight.
Being good.
It doesn't take as many people to change the world as I used to think. It takes one artist, maybe a couple artists now with machines, and then people to see it. You know, that's about all it takes now. But I used to think it took like 1 million people to make a thing happen. I don't know.
Well,
if
it's
that's
like
true.
a wave, you know what I mean? Like there's always one drop of water that's at the front of the wave, but it's not making the wave happen. I do think existence and human civilization and philosophy and everything does move like waves. So Kanye's at the front of the wave, but he's not making the wave. He just happens to be, you know, that first drop of water.
Right, said Fred said something in Russia once. I like it. And then Stefan Giant, you're right. Classic arch design. Put a bulge in a column to mimic in columns to mimic flexing to hold up roof, reassuring us. New designs aim to make us feel unsettled. Yeah, that's true. Absolutely. We talked about this actually, Stefan, the Guggenheim, compared to maybe we did. I don't know if we talked enough about the buttresses, but we should at some point go into that. But I do want to use the Rick and Morty snake metaphor because you guys have already probably seen the Rick and Morty, so it's okay to do a spoiler alert. But in case you hadn't thought about what this episode was all about, time traveling snakes. There's a thing where they reach fascist snakes in space, and the only way to deal with the fascist snakes is to they eventually, because they invent time travel, Rick goes back and gives them time travel at an earlier date even, which defeats their own fascist line. But they think that they're, you know, he's like laughing at them like, wow, can you imagine being a racist snake? You know, like that's like ha ha ha. But that's literally the, you know, that's the only way to make it okay. And they have to decide, okay, we're going to kill Abraham Lincoln. And then they said, stop Abraham Lincoln from getting killed. And then we're going to kill Hitler snake. And then that becomes the culmination of when they decide if they're going to kill Hitler snake. Where's that at? I don't know if I can find it. But every snake goes back and forth to try and stop and start the assassination of the Hitler snake, because that is the moment, the culmination of the triggering of what happens and what reality. And it all comes down to if we destroy, you know, that one moment or something like that. But similarly, that's what we're saying when we say, okay, well, humans, they have to decide on a racial basis. It's actually so much bigger than that. It's just
belief systems, you know? So
yeah.
We need two different words. Like Kanye needs like a different word. Instead of saying Jew, like I coined the word the other day, Jatheist, someone who happens to be genetically Jewish but is an atheist, a Jatheist. So then you can say with Jews, people who actually go to temple and cover their heads and believe in this stuff. And I'm not saying that's better or worse. It's just what they are. And then Jatheists, people who come from a region where Jewish people came from, but like don't believe in God.
Yeah,
because that's who the problem people are. And I don't think the best state humanity can achieve is just genuflecting to ancient texts. I think those ancient texts can be good for keeping you in line until you figure it out on your own. But I think ideally we figure it out on our own, and we don't need the stories and the commandments to just follow blindly. So I think that's somewhere we'd like to go beyond Abrahamic religions.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to get you to talk also with David Plate at some point, because I know he grew up similarly, not really Jewish, but having a Jewish background, his father similarly. And, you know, then he got involved with a rabbi who he was like taking care of like somehow. And then the guy ended up tutoring him in Hebrew. So he's gotten a more, you know, a fresher approach.
I've never even been to temple. I wasn't bar mitzvahed or anything like that. And I'm agnostic. I was Christian for a while and now I'm just agnostic.
Yeah, it's like it's funny because people associate the religion with the race necessarily, and also.
Can I be a Jedi? Can I just choose Jedi? I mean, Jedi is so good, man.
Jedi clearly means
supposed to be Jedis.
Yeah, Jedi Yud, right? And that's the thing. And Yoda, it also means to know and wisdom and things like that. If you look into Star Wars, it's
how is George Lucas like so tapped into all this? Is he just like a cipher or like?
That's a great question, man. I gotta wonder if it's just because is it just because the West Coast is based and he got a good university experience? I don't know.
I think he absorbed a lot of that Joseph Campbell. There was like a school based off of all of Joseph Campbell's writings, and he was like a student there or a big follower of all of that. I mean, that's why
very cool.
The hero with 1,000 faces in the Star Wars, main trilogy.
But yeah, he had some weird. You got to imagine like how weird. His dad owned a stationery store in California, and he had access. His mom was a librarian or into books, but his mom got sick a lot or something. And there's a whole like the Young Indiana Jones is kind of about his own life.
Oh, really? I forgot about that. I was going to ask you if George Lucas's father was in the military-industrial complex.
No, yeah, he apparently not.
Stationery store guy, because he did PHX 1130, whatever it is. I forget the number.
At the 1138, and shot in the parking lot structure in San Mateo County. And
just a lot of predictive stuff that became culturally, crucial.
even just his obsession with Corsica is interesting. The fact that he knows so much about Corsica, and that could just be, you know, a fluke that he was minorly interested in Napoleon that led him to Corsica. But Corsica is so pressing right now with the gun trading expos around the world, and with the, you know, the Illuminati, the propaganda dua, Masonic lodges of Italy, right? So it's interesting because he definitely knows something about something that very few people think about, and that's become the, you know, Tatooine is clearly Corsica, and Amidala, and the pre-Napoleonic Livonian Empire. So for whatever reason, he's very interested in the majestic ship period, and you can even see it with all of the ships in space. And they've said it in the commentary that the battles of the ships are based on the movements of actual HMS Her Majesty's Royal ships in the Navy in the 1600s. And from one part of like episode 2 or 3, they show it's a real-time render even. So throughout 20 minutes of the scene happening, the way that you can tell the time is the ships have moved to where they moved in real life in the 1600s in this time, and the amount of time it would have taken the ship to move. So,
wow.
I mean, the weird things is interested in, but also it shows that he's open-minded because, or it shows he doesn't really have as many of his own ideas as people think, because he obsesses over these little details to make those his own, right? Because if you had this really overall arching story that you were focused on, you wouldn't care. And that shows up sometimes. He's like, have whatever characters you want. I just want to make sure this story arc happens. Other times it's like, I just want to make sure it's this specific battle. So I don't know what his whole, you know, God only knows.
I would say that it seems to fit in with like what Seth is saying, that there's a lot of mythology, there's a lot of just natural characters in there, and whoever's helping them write it or whatever's going on, they seem to know what they're doing. I mean, even the Jedi itself is based on a star, right? With it starts with a D, to Jedi, right? And really all the characters fit into an astrological characteristic that they all have, right? And I mean, just too many things are too closely related to mythology that I would feel that this is not just like made up stuff. He's well read. He knows what he's doing, or the people that are helping him.
I think one of the great tragedies of our time is what they did with the sequel trilogy, you know, because the story was so important, even though the prequels weren't well made movies. They were terribly directed, horrible scripts, worst actors ever. But still the stories were incredible. Like if you just read the scripts, you know, or the story beats of them, you know, what's going on with the political intrigue and all that stuff. It's like, it's unbelievably deep and connected to real world events. And then just to be robbed of the final chapter of that, the final 3 movies, and to know the direction it's supposed to go in, the completion of it is just like, it's total affront to mythology and like the human experience in general.
You've seen the original chest plate, right? In the original version of Star Wars. So if you watch the original Star Wars, and they've CGI replaced it. Let me see if I can find Darth Vader.
The rabbi's breastplate.
Yeah, is this it? I think this is the way it looks in the original, right? And so I forget what it says. David Plate's got a good decryption of this because it's not perfect.
It's like the Melchizedek, right?
Yeah, it's like you can open something. You can open a door with an atonement, or the forgiveness. The atonement will be. It's the atonement of the Babylonians, or something like that. I forget the way it works. But then they've changed.
His whole character is about atonement too.
And they didn't expect Star Wars to be as popular as it was. So then they go back into CGI, replace all this stuff with their new language. But even looking at his chest plate, you know, you look at like ancient.
I think it's Melchizedek, right?
Chest plate. Yeah, because the Order of Melchizedek are the ones to have the taxes. They're able to tax. The right to tax, according to the Bible.
And they're a priest and a king, right? They're like a
of dual. Because there's Aaron's. There's a bloodline of
Aaron. Yes,
the Aaronic.
This breastplate thing. So it's interesting. It came up in my research of Yale University. Apparently, there's 2 words on the breastplate that have something to do with light and truth, I guess, and they are symbolized with like a black and a white stone. and these stones were used for divination. Well, this symbology is used in Yale University's seal.
Wow.
Wow. This is also a part of Zionism. Like you have to get all the stones back in the breastplate after you have the red heifer. Like these are all steps that are necessary to bring forth the Jewish Messiah and the end of the epoch.
Yeah, because the Messiah and the Melchizedek are all related because it has to do with balancing out, severity and mercy, which is your Saturn and your Jupiter, and that's why it's white and black. They represent your white and black, right? Also, the sun and the moon are basically doing the same kind of thing. That's why in astrology you have your Saturn and Jupiter across from your sun and your moon, and then Mercury, which is the child of the sun, basically, and the one that's allowed to move up and down all the way down to Saturn or Satan or whatever and back up to God, right? So it all connects.
Mark, you sent this.
You mentioned Corsica being important, and I remembered hearing something about this when I was looking into some American history stuff with the Society of Cincinnati. And this Pasquale Paoli guy inspired some of the people that were part of the American Revolution. And a couple of cities in the United States are named after him. And he, I guess, wrote the the Declaration of Independence for the Corsican Republic. That's that's what it says right there. So, yeah.
Wow.
Maybe that's partly why Lucas was inspired to talk about him. Who knows? Maybe his relatives are related to this guy, or he's related to somebody who was a part of the Sons of Liberty group. I mean, a lot of people were connected to these types of groups throughout the 19th century and the early 20th century prior to World War II. So maybe he could have learned about it through there. I don't know.
By the by, this is the flag for the Anglo-Corsican kingdom, in case you ever saw the weirdest flag before ever. I don't know. It's just
the Moor. It's a Moor's head, right? We have the
no, with that nose, no way.
Well, maybe it's conceptualized to be like a mix of both, right? Like the idea is that Sicilian people are partly Moor, right? They have African DNA, so to speak, or at least that's
all Spaniards,
yeah. So maybe this connects to the Moor's head is like a theme throughout different European royal families. They'll have this as a symbol because several noble people from the Muslim empires and Africa would come through Europe and teach them all sorts of things, because obviously that in that time period the Islamic Empire was advanced in all of these different scientific things, and these gentlemen came around and inspired the Europeans around the time that they were doing these medieval schools, right? So these medieval universities who developed to become the universities that we now have today.
Yeah.
Right. Interesting.
Man, 19th century. Well, okay, let me see if there's also... We're near 2 hours. Anything else you guys wanted to try to cover? Okay, I was going to point out the Alex Jones thing.
Oh. Yeah. I would love to just quickly touch on that, the confluence between the lawsuits against Alex Jones and the lawsuit against Kanye West. And again, this is something hard to talk about on YouTube, but for everything Kanye said about Jews, I think the reason he's really going to get in trouble is for what he said about George Floyd's story not being accurate and being a false flag.
Right. Even though he did, you saw that Kanye just gave $2 million to this daughter of George.
A long time ago, he did that. He did that in 2020.
Oh, okay.
But she wants 250 now. But the reason is to send the clear signal that you cannot question. You can't be famous and question false flags.
Right. That's the thing is everyone's being forced. And you saw this with MIA, is that MIA's, now said she's basically not speaking from their script anymore, if she ever was. And so it's very clear that she's not reading from their script. So it's bad in the sense that it's going to get her less views, but it's good in the sense that all of a sudden I'm subscribed, because now I'm like, oh, well, why subscribe to 1,000 people that all read from the same script? I'm only going to subscribe to the few people that actually have their own original thoughts. So I'll subscribe to her.
I don't think she'll get in too much trouble, because she was just kind of she's going after the V and V information. But like, I think if you specifically target a false flag and say that the narrative isn't correct, because our entire mental slave system is based off of, it's the reasoning for all the war and death and suffering in the past 2 centuries is like everything, from the Lusitania on forth, everything is based off of a false flag. And if people start pulling at these threads, there's still a lot of living people attached to 9/11, and God forbid that people start investing. Wait, what did Americans do to an American city and to other Americans, and for what reason? And also, just like the official narratives have to be forgotten, because when you go back and look at the moon landing, there's like a lot of red flags. Even to go back and look at 9/11 and the coverage of that from the day of, now that it's like over 20 years ago, it just doesn't hold up well. It's like an old movie with the special effects, so they really can't allow people to reopen these subjects.
Yeah, I love how scary these articles are. You're right. Yes, Alex Jones and Kanye West deserve to pay millions for the damage they cause families of victims. And this is the title of the article. And it's just, clearly they're getting to the point where they're saying, if you want to step out and have your own opinion at all, or you want to say anything, then we're going to teach you a lesson, and we're going to teach other people a lesson through you. Really,
specifically on false flags. Yeah, because that's like their whole, that is the way they catalyze all of the death and destruction in the world.
Word. Brutal. Also, Ping Trip's new video interview with Alex Jones will be available if it's not already. I think it's out right now, but you can see parts of it. So check out Ping Trip's interview with Alex Jones. That's pretty sweet. And thanks. I mean, so let me pull up like Linktree for Venice Beach Sub Club. I know that your music's coming strong. Harvard's video right here.
Yep, I got a bunch of videos on YouTube, and all my music's on Spotify, Apple, iTunes, everywhere. And I also do my daily show on Instagram called Talkie Time. Shout out! I see there's some Talkie Timers in the chat. Shout out to them.
There is
that's at 6 o'clock every day on, except for Wednesdays now because of this, on Instagram. And I say everything, but there, by the way, for some reason, I can say all the trigger words. I can say all the things that are supposed to get you taken down off the internet. For some reason on Instagram Live, I just get away with it.
Yeah.
So
and it's pretty good. And you also do a lot of interesting interviews on there too. So make sure you're watching, because there's some cool stuff.
I got to have you back on soon.
Yeah. Definitely, man.
And all you guys, I got to get all you guys on. I've been slacking on the interviews. So
yeah, Dave Smith on? Is that Dave
Hmm?
Smith? Did you talk to him, or are you reposting?
Oh, I wish. No, I'm just a huge supporter of his.
I was gonna say, I mean, I could put you in touch with him. I have his email, but I just was. Sam was just at Skankfest. I was watching some the live footage from Skankfest. It's funny to see a guy like Dave at a place as debaucherous as Skankfest, but
right, because he's kind of upright now since he had his wife and kids and everything. But I'm just a huge supporter. I mean,
he's always been upright, even if he likes to have a little.
He's a truth teller. He's a truth teller, and he's when he went. I don't want to go overtime or anything. I know this is supposed to just be my links, but just interesting little quick story. The last time he spoke to Owen Benjamin, which you're not even supposed to do, Owen Benjamin brought up that he doesn't think nuclear bombs are real, and Dave Smith was like intellectually curious. He's like, why? And Owen gave him the reason. He's like, honestly, the government lies about everything else. So he's like, I'm totally open to that. So you can have like a serious boy that's like taken over like the third political party and going to run for president, and he could come on Xirtus' show and talk about giants. So it's like what a gem, those don't come along too often.
Yeah, we should get Dave on. I haven't talked to him in a while. That'd be a good thing we should think about. But also in that same vein of logic, we should check out My Family Thinks I'm Crazy. Let me go to his website, because you do pretty great interviews as well. I know you just told me about one that I want to see. What was the one that was?
They're pretty great, thank you. And I just hit 1 million downloads
on the RSS. Yeah, that's awesome.
On the podcast.
Congrats, brother.
And
nice.
Seth, I would love to join you on your show. I just want
to
get a chance.
Likewise, or vice versa.
Yeah, I think and Swapcast as well. Like maybe we could record the Instagram live, and I'll Swapcast that and give people on the RSS feed a little taste of what the Instagram live podcast is like, because I like that. I've never done an Instagram live podcast, but
you just did one where you talked to
Rick Strassman. You looked him up earlier,
right?
Yeah, that episode will be out this Friday. The video is already out on Rockfin for all the Rockfin supporters, and then we just did a YouTube live Illuminati Confirmed last night here on YouTube. So if people want to go and check that out, but I felt like there was another thing I was going to plug. Esoteric America. If people are waiting, we haven't done an episode in 2 weeks. Don't worry. We haven't given up. We will do another episode soon. Yeah, there was something else. But anyways, yeah, this has been another fascinating conversation. Always happy to be here on Wednesday Ultra.
Dude. And then Giant, you can find Giant on Twitter and in the Discord. Join up if you haven't already. Go to Giant on Twitter or click on the.
Sorry, I just wanted to say that I've been watching both your guys' stuff, and awesome work, great music, VBDC, Seth, and
thanks, bro.
Mark. Your interviews, man, are great. I was just watching the Sam Tripoli. I didn't know you were working with Sam Tripoli, working for him or whatever.
Yeah,
I learned so much just by watching your guys' stuff, man. I'm just like, you guys.
Yeah, I know Mark only through Sam originally. If it weren't for and it's like super rad. Yeah,
I was just on Sam's show last week. Maybe I already said that last time we did this, but yeah, it's been about 2 years now. So,
dude, yeah. So check out the new episode. I haven't listened to it yet, so I'll listen to it after this. But yeah, the new Sam Tripoli with Mark. That's crazy. But yeah, guys, it's been pretty awesome. I'll see you next week, and in the meantime, stay pretty ultra.
Thank you. Awesome
Thank
one.
you guys. Yeah.
Peace.